Help me with the gravy, Vanessa, and put that phone away. From the other side of the kitchen, my stepmother Claire yelled, her voice as harsh as glass. Across the counter, where I had been studying in between assisting with Thanksgiving preparations, I glanced up at my college textbook. In our Denver home, there was a lot of stress. Like molasses, and I sensed that something wasn't quite right. At the age of 21, I was a criminal justice major and a junior at Colorado State University. My name is Vanessa McBride. I've always found law enforcement to be fascinating, and I hope to work for the FBI eventually. The irony of that, the dream will soon be quite evident. I commuted to university 3 days a week while working part-time at Gravora Group, a local accounting firm, and lived at home to save money. Because of my father, Thomas McBride's prosperous import-export company, we were able to live comfortably in a high-end neighborhood close to Cherry Creek. Sorry, Claire. I was just finishing this chapter on federal investigations, I murmured, putting my criminology textbook down and heading for the stove. The air smelled of stuffing and turkey, yet behind it all was an "always with your nose in those books," Claire murmured, her immaculately manicured nails cracking against the wooden spoon as she stirred. Your father works hard to support this family, so the least you could do is show some. I bit my tongue when she expressed gratitude during the holidays. Claire, who was only 15 years older than me, married my father 3 years ago, 6 months after my mother passed away in a car accident, and she never forgot that she was now the lady of the house. My father had changed since their marriage. Where is Dad anyway? He's becoming more evasive and more suspicious, taking calls at strange hours, and going on mysterious business trips. Observing the clock, I inquired. It was almost 4 p.m., and shortly our visitors would arrive. In his office, he had to answer a crucial call. You know how demanding his clientele can be. Claire said, something about a delayed shipment from overseas, but her voice faltered a little. I saw a dark vehicle parked across the street from the kitchen window. Perhaps it was intuition, or perhaps all those criminal justice studies were making me nervous, but something about the car's tinted windows made my skin crawl. The street was unfamiliar to me, and it had been there all morning. My phone rang on the counter, and I hurriedly looked at it before Claire could reprimand me again. The message read, "Unknown number." I nearly disregarded it, but something forced me to look, and it made my blood run cold. I had always looked up to my father as a child. Thomas McBride was a self-made guy who had started his import company from nothing. Walk away right once. Don't say anything to anyone at the table, especially your father. Ireland in his 20s. He showed me the value of honesty, hard effort, and standing up for what was right, or so I thought until recently, when I began to notice odd contradictions in his stories over the course of a few months, including business meetings that lasted until 3 in the morning. Phone conversations in which he discussed packages and deliveries in hushed tones, but most worryingly, he began to ask me specific questions about my friends, my college schedule, and even my social security number for what he said were insurance purposes. Vanessa, honey, could you help me understand something? I need to know all the places where your name might be listed for my accountant, he had inquired 2 weeks prior while we were sitting in his home office. You know, credit cards, bank accounts, and any business affiliations. His insistence that I apply for a business credit card for emergencies and his having me sign documents he said were for college loans were among the unusual conversations that came pouring back to me as I stared at that cryptic text message, which at the time seemed strange but harmless. Applications but never allowed me to read them attentively. The way his business partner, Victor Kossoff, always gave me a discomfiting look when he came to visit our home. Claire kept running around the kitchen, but I saw that her hands were shaking as she stacked the dinner rolls. She continued to look toward the corridor that went to my father's office, where I could hear his hushed voice behind the closed door. Frantic and concerned. Claire, I asked softly, do you feel alarmed? Everything's okay, she said, spinning around with a pale face. Why would you ask that? She asked. Because you've been jittery all day and Dad has been locked in that office for hours. Normally, he loves helping with Thanksgiving dinner. Claire was about to reply when the doorbell rang. My phone buzzed again, and I saw our guests coming in through the front window, my Aunt Patricia, Uncle Robert, and my younger cousin Jenny. They were just regular family members unaware of the storm that was building in our home. The same unidentified number. FBI agents are positioned. When I give the signal, head straight to your room. Don't alert anyone. Your life is on the line. My hands began to I shuddered as I read the words, FBI agents. What could they possibly want with our family? I saw everything in the kitchen differently, the costly improvements my father had completed the previous year, the new automobiles. Claire's expensive clothing and jewelry. Really, where was all this money coming from? I saw 2 more cars pull into our neighborhood through the kitchen window. People in dark clothing were strolling along the sidewalk, but their movements seemed too deliberate, too well coordinated. My criminology training came in, and I saw the telltale indicators of a tactical operation taking place, and I knew that I was right in the middle of it. The front door opened, and the happy shouts of my family filled the home. Uncle Robert, who had already untied his tie and remarked on how good everything smelled, trailed behind Aunt Patricia, who came into the kitchen with her usual warmth, carrying a homemade pumpkin pie and talking about highway traffic. My 17-year-old cousin Jenny, who was always glued to her phone, gave me a quick hug before vanishing into Aunt Patricia looked at my face worriedly and said, "Vanessa, dear, you look pale," asking whether I was okay. My voice sounded odd, but I managed to respond, "Just tired from school," even to my own ears. I was more shaken by the text messages than I wanted to admit, and I kept looking out the window, trying to see the surveillance cars without drawing attention to myself. My father eventually came out of his office, his face flushed and his hair a little unkempt. "Patricia Robert, so good to see you," he boomed, embracing my aunt with what seemed like forced enthusiasm. I was just wrapping up some urgent business calls, but I could see the tension in his shoulders and the way his eyes kept darting toward the windows as he put on his best cheerful host performance. "Oh, Thomas, surely you can take one day off. For family." Aunt Patricia gently reprimanded him. Of course, of course. You know how it is in the import game. The world never sleeps." "Business is done for the day," he said. I attempted to remain normal as my mind raced, but I noticed that his phone was still tightly gripped in his hand. The dining room table looked magnificent, much like every other family meeting, but it was odd, and the crystal glasses caught the light even though the porcelain dishes were shining and the golden turkey was sitting triumphantly in the middle of the table. I could feel a sinister undertone behind this picture of household beauty. "Grace," my father murmured in a steady, familiar voice. But rather than dropping my head, I found myself examining his face. Claire said, "Let's start with what we're all thankful for this year," but I wasn't sure when his smile had started to seem forced rather than real, or when the laugh wrinkles around his eyes had changed to worry lines. Declared, slicing through the turkey with practiced accuracy. "How about you start, Thomas?" After clearing his throat, my father raised his wine glass. "I am grateful for the chances that lie ahead, for another prosperous year in business, and for my lovely family." I was chilled by the way he highlighted opportunities. I had placed my phone on my lap, out of sight, and it buzzed with another message. "Now proceed to your room. Avoid looking back. Don't caution anyone." My heart pounded against my chest as I made a choice that would alter my entire life. I pulled my chair back and got to my feet, but my legs felt shaky. "Everyone, I apologize. I had to hurry upstairs for a bit. I believe I forgot something in my room." "Claire, Vanessa, the supper just began." With her fork hanging halfway to her mouth, she objected. "Anything can wait. It will just be a few seconds," I said, plastering a plastic-feeling smile onto my face. "Promise me." I moved as lightly as possible in the direction of the stairway. Control, but each stride seemed significant and heavy. Uncle Robert was making a remark about the football game, and Aunt Patricia was asking about Jenny's college applications. I could hear my relatives talking again behind me. Typical family banter that seemed like it came from a realm other than mine abruptly occupying I heard the familiar sound of automobile doors slamming outside as soon as I climbed to the top of the steps. Several vehicles arrive at once, not just one or two. Dark SUVs were parked strategically across our area, as I could see from the window of the upper hallway. Women and men wearing military clothing were circling our home with meticulous accuracy. When my phone rang, I jumped. The same unidentified number that had been messaging me. "Hello," I said in a scarcely audible whisper. "Vanessa McBride." The voice sounded clear, polished, and female. "Yes, it's me, Special Agent Rebecca Torres from the FBI. Your life could be on the line, so pay close attention and do as I say." The words struck me as if they were a physical blow. The FBI. This was true. "I don't know what's happening. You are misinformed about your father's business. He has been exploiting your identity to help illicit arms trafficking, and we have proof of it. You're more than a helpless onlooker. For federal offenses, you are being set up as a fall guy." Arms trafficking made the hallway seem to circle me. My father was a criminal who had helped me with my studies and taught me how to ride a bike. It isn't feasible. I inhaled into the telephone. Furniture and textiles are imported by him. Take a listen, Vanessa. The federal warrant will be executed on your home in approximately 30 seconds. Your dad is anticipating this. In our opinion, he intends to eliminate any witnesses who might implicate him. You're included in that. The phrase, "eliminate witnesses," made my blood run cold. Do you mean my dad wants to murder me? We have recorded exchanges showing that he considers you a liability. He has been utilizing your personal information to launder money from the sale of weapons, forged documents, and establish shell corporations. He intends to give the impression that you are the mastermind if he is captured. The noise coming from downstairs was normal discourse is now taking place. Something Uncle Robert had said had Jenny laughing. Claire asked if anyone needed additional wine. With everything I was learning, the domesticity of it all felt disgusting. How do I proceed? I muttered. Stay exactly where you are. Do not go back downstairs under any circumstances. We're coming in through the front door in 10 seconds. Your father may try to call you down. Do not respond. Just like clockwork, my dad's voice echoed up the steps. Sweetheart, come down here, Vanessa. Patricia, your aunt, would like to tell you about her journey to Europe. I felt my blood freeze. The timing couldn't be more ideal or handy. Agent Torres was accurate. With a harsher voice, my father called again, Vanessa, hoping to get me back downstairs before the FBI showed up. Come on down here now. From my bedroom window, I could observe snipers on other properties and tactical officers occupying positions around our home. Armored cars and rooftops obstructing our street on both ends. It was more than just an arrest. A significant government operation, this was. Using my phone, Agent Torres remarked, "They're here, don't leave where you are, no matter what happens." There was an enormous crash when the front door exploded inward. Shouts came from the lower level. FBI agents, federal agents, and all those on the ground. I heard chairs scuffing the floor, my father's voice rising, and my aunt yelling. In rageful outrage. But Claire's response, or rather, her lack thereof, was what shivered me the most. Thomas, they know everything, she said in a composed, resigned tone, replacing the startled screams coming from downstairs. Embody. Our hardwood floors echoed with the thud of heavy boots. Commands were screamed by several voices. Those hands are visible. Keep still. Keep the perimeter secure. I was constantly informed by Agent Torres via my phone. Informed. Just now, your dad reached into his jacket for something. My coworkers are holding him in check. You're getting cooperation from your stepmother. For the last 6 months, she has been employed by us. The FBI has been working with Claire. Like a sledgehammer, the realization struck me. Real time was causing everything I believed to be true about my family to fall apart. She found out about your father's illicit activities and got in touch with us. She has been attempting to keep you safe while giving you details about his operation. She was aware that this day was approaching, which is why she had been so uptight recently. I could hear my Aunt Patricia sobbing and demanding to know what was going on downstairs. Uncle Robert said in a bewildered and irate tone. Jenny, a cousin of mine, was crying. The reason these defenseless relatives were forced into a federal takeover was of my father's transgressions. Vanessa, there's something I need you to comprehend. Torres, agent, went on. It has been your father's intention to vanish following this Thanksgiving meal. There is proof that he planned to stage your death and leave the country with the money that he had taken. Today was never supposed to be your day. The words caused my legs to buckle, and I fell to the hallway floor. My own father, the guy I had loved and adored, the man who had reared me, had been plotting my death. The betrayal was so total, so heartbreaking that I was unable to even consider it emotionally. For what reason? I said in a whisper. Why would he harm me in this way? Cash and despair. Millions of dollars were being lost in his gun trafficking organization. He had to find someone to blame and get rid of anyone who might reveal his identity. The paper trail was made possible by your identity, and the case would have been closed had you died. The stairs were now being climbed with heavy footsteps. Agent Torres's team coordination was audible to me. The main floor is safeguarded for the subject. The victim is secure on the second level. At the top of the stairs a few moments later was a woman dressed in FBI tactical gear. She had dark hair, was tall, and had eyes that were serious but friendly. My name is Agent Torres, Vanessa. You're secure now. I stared at her numbly, still trying to take it all in. How are my uncle and aunt doing? They are doing well. Fearful and bewildered, yet unhurt. They weren't aware of your father's activities. Occasionally, they provide us with statements, after which they are allowed to leave. How about Claire? Her contribution to our inquiry has been priceless. We could not have saved you in time if she hadn't cooperated. I got up with the assistance of Agent Torres. Vanessa, she truly cares for you. She risked everything to assist us because of this. I could hear my dad's voice from downstairs. The tone was cold and calculated instead of the familiar warmth of a father's voice. Nothing tangible is in your possession. All you believe to be true is indirect. Then Claire's voice reached my ears. It was more powerful than I had ever heard. Stop it, Thomas. They have the recordings. Their financial documents are in their possession. They have it all. You got me on tape? My father's voice was angry and incredulous. Claire retorted, You are a traitor. I made sure your daughter was safe. Something you were never willing to do. Agent Torres gave me an empathetic glance. I understand that this is too much to handle, but please know that you are a victim and not in trouble, but we will need your assistance to hold your father accountable for his actions. I was shown downstairs by Agent Torres, where the scene appeared to have been lifted from a criminal drama. Agents from the FBI were using their radios to coordinate, bag evidence, and take pictures. My aunt and uncle were sitting on the couch in the living room, looking stunned but unhurt. Jenny had tears running down her cheeks as she held on to her mother. In a chair close to the dining room table, my father had his hands zip-tied behind his back. He changed his demeanor from one of rage to one of almost relief when he spotted me walking down the stairs. Vanessa, thank God you're safe, he replied, wearing that kind, fatherly tone. I can tell you why these agents made such a horrible mistake. But now I could see straight through him. The performance was perfect. The worried parent, the gullible businessman, became embroiled in a miscommunication. I might have accepted Agent Torres's explanation if I hadn't heard it and hadn't witnessed the tactical operation. Silently, I murmured, Don't do it. I caught a glimpse of something cold and calculating in his eyes when his mask briefly slipped. Instead of being my devoted father, this Thomas McBride was a criminal who had been prepared to sacrifice his own daughter in order to protect himself. Claire stepped gingerly toward me. She tears stung my face. I'm very sorry, Vanessa. According to the FBI, it would be too risky for me to tell you everything. He was keeping an eye on your email, phone, and everything else. For what duration? Have you been aware? She was asked. When I discovered records in his office 6 months ago, I began to suspect something. Accounts in banks I had never heard of. shipping manifests that were inconsistent with his company's records. I challenged him, and he threatened me. The woman, her eyes were wiped. But I called the FBI when I saw that he was going to get you more directly involved. We were joined in conversation by Agent Torres. Claire gave us vital information, including shipping paperwork, financial data, and audio recordings of discussions. If she hadn't shown such bravery, your father could have been able to frame you for his offenses. I took another look at my father, examining the guy who had influenced every aspect of my life. Was it all true? The person I believed you to be? Our friendship, and the principles you instilled in me? He steadily met my eyes. Vanessa, I loved you. I still do. But love doesn't cover your housing costs or college fees. To support this family, I took the necessary actions. I said rather bluntly, you were going to kill me. He lost all his composure for the first time. It would not have been intimate. The process would have been quick and painless. If your father had loved you, you would have died with that belief. What was more unsettling than any anger was the casualness with which he addressed my planned murder. It wasn't. My father had reared me. Or perhaps it was, and I had never known him well. Then Agent Torres moved forward. You are under arrest, Thomas McBride, for violating federal firearms laws, money laundering, identity theft, international arms trafficking, and conspiracy to commit murder statutes. Other agents were getting ready to transport him when she started reading his rights. My father gave me one final look as they escorted him to the door. I'm sorry, Vanessa, but this is what happened. Yes, I really am. But one day you'll comprehend. Family isn't always sufficient. I said, you're right, and I was surprised at how steady my voice was. Family isn't always sufficient. However, true love doesn't entail murder, and it shouldn't be. His genuine astonishment was the final thing I saw of him before the agents took leave him alone. I watched my father's defense lawyer make one last, frantic plea to the jury 6 months later while I sat in a federal courthouse in downtown Denver. He was the target of overwhelming evidence. Financial documents, chats that were captured, and his criminal companions' testimonies, who had consented to collaborate in return for lighter terms. The most damning proof, however, came from me, an unexpected source. I had been carefully collaborating with the FBI to unearth the entire scope of his criminal activity in the weeks after his incarceration. I learned from them how to get access to the phony businesses he had set up using my name. We tracked money laundering activities in 3 different nations. I assisted them in identifying further trafficking network members and deciphering his communication patterns. I found that it was worse. Greater than I had first thought. Not all of my father's business was selling guns. He had been supplying drug cartels and terrorist groups with them. The blood money that had covered our property, my college tuition, and our affluent lifestyle was tainted by the deaths of innumerable innocent people. His fate, however, was sealed by the murderous scheme. Claire's recordings showed the terrifying specifics of his death staging scheme. He studied toxins that would resemble natural causes. Before the mirror, he had rehearsed his bereaved father act. He had even composed a fictitious suicide note in my handwriting that I was unable to bear the shame of my transgressions. The prosecutor's closing remarks addressed the jury, ladies and gentlemen. There was more to Thomas McBride's betrayal of his nation. The most important trust of all, that between a father and daughter, was breached by him. He was prepared to kill his own child in order to escape punishment for his transgressions. Across the courtroom, my father's gaze locked with me as the jury filed out to deliberate. I experienced no emotion. Just a chilly sense of contentment that justice was at last being done, without any love, hate, or sorrow. The jury spent less than 3 hours deliberating. Upon their return, the foreman stood up and gave their decision. Guilty in every way. As the judge read out my father's sentence, I noticed his hands shaking a little, but his face stayed expressionless. Federal prison life sans the chance for parole. There was a deep sense of closure for me as the guards carried him away in shackles. I had lost the man who had reared me, but at last the monster who had plotted my murder was being brought to justice. I was discovered on the steps outside the courthouse by Agent Torres. "What are your feelings?" did she ask. I exclaimed, "Free," and I meant it. I feel totally free for the first time in months. Claire joined us, her face displaying the relief of someone who has carried a horrible load for too long. "Thank you," she said to me, "for possessing the fortitude to finish this." "I know it couldn't have been easy," I said. "Thank you for saving my life." She gave me a sorrowful grin and said, "You're the closest thing I've ever had to a daughter." I couldn't let him damage you. Agent Torres gave me a business card. I meant what I had said earlier. I would suggest a career with the FBI to anyone who is still interested in it. What you've done over the last 6 months, the way you've helped us figure things out. I stared at the card and thought about my boyhood dreams of being an FBI agent, which had been sparked by observing my father, who I believed symbolized justice and moral courage. Now that I knew the truth about him, however, I realized that this case demonstrates precisely the kind of integrity and intellect we need. That, in some way, made my calling even more apparent. I answered, "I'll think about it," but I had already decided. Years later, Thomas McBride passed away by himself in federal prison, his arms trafficking network entirely destroyed, and his accomplices serving lengthy punishments. His possessions were seized, his name became synonymous with treachery in law enforcement circles, and his character was ruined. Claire utilized the confiscated property to create a foundation for victims of arms trafficking, guaranteeing that his blood money would finally be put to good use. I, on the other hand, graduated from summa cum laude and joined the FBI's counterterrorism division, where I focused on catching criminals who take advantage of their own families for financial gain. Each case I resolved and each criminal I assisted in apprehending felt like a tiny victory over the man who had attempted to destroy me. The retribution I had sought was more than just a personal one, it was a dedication to making sure that no other child would endure what he had intended for me.